Welcome student, welcome to tutorial 3 one more time. The previous tutorial we have talked about more onto personal, about individual in terms of their cognitive, their behavior and their feeling. But on tutorial 3 we'll look more specific into the social world, which will relate ourselves towards the world. And we'll look today on two topics. The first one, the topic 5, will describe on multiple subjects. The persuasion process, in which how you are persuaded, the attitude change. We have talked about that in the previous tutorial, that attitude is hard to change, but it is actually possible to change, which we will discuss later on. And then we also have the dual process models of persuasion, the tactics for enhancing compliance, okay, incentive-induced attitude change, cognitive dissonance theories, research paradigms, and also resistance to persuasion. Now, topic 6, it would describe on the types of social influence, how you are influenced by the social factors. Obedience to authority, especially in terms of the power that people hold. It can be you as a mother or you as a boss. Studies to conformity. Why do people conform to the social standard? Minority influence, we also will touch on to minority people. How significant are they in terms of the social world? And also some of the famous experiments that you should know, especially on Asch and also Sherif experiments. Now, topic 5, we start on persuasion and attitude change. Now, by the end of this topic, you should be able to explain the process of attitude and also the behavior change, namely your persuasion and also the use of incentive. Explain how attitude can change. Thirdly, explain several approaches to persuasion. After this, you learn some of the methods that you could enhance towards your way to persuade other people. The fourth one is to explain the concept and the process of compliance, and also to identify how behavior is influenced by changing attitude. And lastly, to identify theories in persuasion and how people resist to persuasion. Now, to start off with, how persuasive are you? I mean, generally, when you speak to other people or when you speak to your friends, when you say something of a knowledge or an information, do people believe you or they think that your information is not that real? Okay, some people are persuasive. I mean, whatever they say, people would believe it, especially leaders or especially the cult leaders. I mean, it's amazing how they manage to bring in so many followers when many of us realize that the theories or the thinking that they have, it's very absurd. Yeah? And also sometimes the professions that you do require some terms or some kinds of persuasion. Most commonly it's the field of sales. When people do sales, they really need to have a thick face, which I don't have, to make sales happen. They really need a technique of persuasion. Now, this is not an inborn. It's not that you're born with the skills of persuasion. I mean, over time, you learn the methods and the skills toward persuading others to buy your product, which in turn you make a living out of it. Now, but some field doesn't require any persuasion at all. Most most of it is in terms of sales. Now, how do you define persuasive? Persuasive is the use of communication. So here is the focus of communication. You got to communicate. You can speak verbally or non-verbally. Most importantly, your action has to be sincere. Once people could sense that your known behavior, communication is not sincere, people will not buy your words or buy your product at all. To change the attitudes and also the behavior of other people. Now, the attitude is the first thing you've got to approach. You've got to realize, let's say you're a seller of a water filter. So you need to change the attitude of people towards how they view the water that the government provides. So people might say it's safe to drink. Other people might say it's very dangerous to drink. They contain a lot of dirt and dust. So this salesman, they would persuade you to change your attitude. After that, more importantly, it's the behavior of other people. Meaning, in terms of persuasive, the change in attitude, it's not sufficient. You've got to change in terms of behavior as well. That is, how do you encourage or persuade people ending up buying your product? Now, this is one thing in the advertisement world. Now, people have difficulty trying to grasp what kind of factor that would change people's attitude and turn into a behavior that they act and they would buy your product. Sometimes they would change your attitude, but that doesn't necessarily mean that people would buy your product. And ultimately that means a failed in your campaign. Yep. Now let's say in terms of an example, I would say a war in Iraq, okay? It happened a few years back. Iraq war, when it started, Bush was being attacked by the Americans, okay? Before the war started, only 33% of them supported the war, okay? But after, when the war has started, almost 88% of them supported Bush approach. The Americans supported the Bush approach. So why did this happen? Why were the Americans persuaded to the extent that they have changed their attitude and they believe that the war in Iraq is justified? And even media plays a huge role. Some of them even realize that through media, they believe that because the war of Iraq, it's to get the mass weapon, nuclear weapon. So this is a disguise which everyone knows about, yeah? But still many people believed it. Now next one, we'll look in terms of the persuasion process. The first one, when we persuade someone, firstly, we have to give information. Yep, information. Before that, first it's the attention. First, you got to get people's attention. That's why they have huge or bright color, or they have a blasting sound to get your attention. Yep, or they'll do something funny, like DG would do their commercial on the yellow man because they want to grab your attention. Next one, after you took their attention, you've got to have the audience or the person to understand what you're saying. After that, this one is to have the person to accept what you're saying. Now, this is a challenge because sometimes it is hard to be persuaded because there are some limitation to persuasion, which we'll discuss further on. Now, after that, acceptance, sometimes most often people will just forget. Yeah, the fourth process is for retention, means to keep the information in your mind, and then we have to have action, the behavior. Yep, inward change, it's not sufficient. We have to have an outward movement, an outward behavior. Next one. When we talk about persuasion, we have four parts that we need to look for. The first one is who. Okay, who hereby means you, or it means the salesman. Who, we look in terms of credibility, Okay, when someone is credible enough, you believe what they say more. Leaders, lecturers, professors, doctors, dentists, you do believe them. And also attractiveness. If you perceive that person to be attractive, of course you would listen to that person more. Yep.